All right, you're on.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, do we even have a quorum? Yes, we do. Okay. All right, I'm going to call us to order then. It's 7 o'clock, just turned 7:01. This is a meeting of the Noank Zoning Commission. It's December 15th, 2020. I'm going to get one more member in here and I'll call the roll and perhaps we'll get our fifth after that. Okay, and there's Dana. Okay, and I'm adding in Robert Accolini. Okay, we'll leave him muted. I'm not sure who he represents or what, but we'll leave him muted for now. Okay, my name is Rick Smith. I'm the chairman of the Noank Zoning Commission. I'm going to call the roll first. Wave when you hear your name. I'm Rick Smith. Blake Powell. Okay. Dana Oviatt. Okay. Now Beth Steele is that camera icon. She's still trying to get video, but she can hear us. So that's our fourth commissioner, and we'll have one more joining us pretty quick. There is a statement I need to read. It's basically because of the opportunity to do meetings via Zoom. Governor's requirement for that purpose, so I'm going to read this. The meeting of the Noank Zoning Commission will take place through Zoom remote meeting technology. My name is Rick Smith, chairman of the commission. The host of the meeting is Larry Dunn, the alternate zoning commission member, so I'll be interacting with him a lot throughout this. Anyone speaking should state their names prior to speaking each time. Somebody remind me because I'm the one who always forgets. The participants in this meeting will be the commission members and staff, persons with applications for architectural design review that have been previously submitted, well, actually for all sorts of review, not just design review tonight, because we have an application for coastal site plan and a special exception for Esker Point Beach. So it will be both of those application types. And the commission's counsel, if he joins, and members of the public who speak during that public hearing. At the discretion of the chairman, with the concurrence of the commission, elected alternate members of the commission may participate during old business during discussion of the short-term rental issue. Participants who would like to comment on an item or share a screen item should indicate by waving your hand in front of the screen or speaking up. I'll recognize you, you can speak. Mute your microphone unless called upon if we get feedback. It hasn't really been a problem for commissioners, only 4 or 5 of us. But if it gets noisy, we can always mute them. To vote, I'll call on you either individually or for a show of hands, wave it in front of the screen. With the exception of the public hearing and a brief general comments section at the beginning for subjects that are not on the agenda, the public will be participating as observers but not speaking. Again, the public hearing and the general comments section, they will. Let's see, when we get to that general comments section, a member of the public wishing to speak will be asked to wave his hand or somehow get our attention. I may ask you. All participants, including commissioners and staff members, must identify themselves each time they speak. You can also submit written comments to the commission after the meeting for consideration on any item discussed tonight. We do all of our contacts by email to make sure we have a record of what was said at both ends of the discussion. Finally, a recording of tonight's meeting will be posted on the Town of Groton's website within 7 days of the meeting. You can find that link at the bottom of the agenda. That probably is how you found out about this meeting. So that's that. We have a public hearing on Esker Point. I think I'm going to take things a bit out of order, though. If you don't mind, I'll take the general comments section first so we can go from the hearing right into discussion of Esker Point. I didn't realize it at the time, but I kind of broke up the agenda a little bit and probably didn't need to. Has Nip, okay, you're getting everybody in when they come. Good. All right, so having said that, this is the period on the agenda where the public can make a comment on a subject not otherwise on the agenda. This is for us to identify emerging issues. Is there anyone, Galaxy S10, Robert Occolini, Dennis Gann, anybody who wants to speak on a subject not on the agenda? And I'm going to unmute all of them so they can speak up because we haven't got screen on them. Larry, I'm having a hard time unmuting them. Can you help with that?
I just did. They should be able to unmute themselves now.
Okay. Okay, he did. So I'm going to make a leap here and say Miss Gill, because I can't pronounce your current surname. If you can unmute your own microphone, and Dennis Gann the same. Does any one of you want to speak on a subject that's not otherwise on the agenda?
No, I don't.
Okay. Galaxy or Robert Occolini or Dennis Gann?
Nothing on my part.
Okay. All right. And
nothing on Colleen's part.
is that Dennis Gann? Okay, so nobody, looks like nobody wants to speak on subjects not on the agenda. Okay, so now we will move to the public hearing. There's a bunch on this. I'm going to open the hearing. I will announce I don't have to read the fact that we did 2 public notices in the day, one on December 11th, another one on December 2nd. So that meets that legal posting and notice requirement. For the record, we can only consider this proposal tonight, not the effect of prior acts, something I learned today. We'll have a presentation by the applicant and questions by the commission, then any comments by the public on this subject, and then questions by the commission. Questions between the applicant and the public is allowed, but they have to be routed through the chairman. Maintain crowd control, if you will. Then questions by the commissioners again, and then debate. The possible outcomes could be to approve the application, to deny it with or without prejudice. Without prejudice would mean they could reapply and have another hearing. We could approve it with conditions, or we can continue the hearing and basically add guidance in that continuation motion that would suggest to the applicant and anybody who's concerned about the proposal what they might do. We have 35 days to complete the hearing. That 35-day period concludes on January 19th, which just fortuitously happens to be the date of our next regular meeting. Or we can continue it beyond the 35 days, but we have to have it the agreement of the applicant to do that. When the hearing is closed, we then have 65 days to make a decision. Very important point. If we continue, and this is for the public as well as commissioners, if we continue the hearing, there is no outside discussion allowed. No one-on-one conversations, no emails to me or any other commissioner, no emails or conversations of the commissioners between themselves or between them and members of the public or the applicant. The rules are in the confines of a hearing, all of the discussions have to be in a public meeting. We will police ourselves religiously on that so we don't get sued over a bad process. So if you see somebody on the street and you want to talk about this subject and we've continued the hearing, they're going to turn on their heel and walk away. Don't think they're being rude, they're just following the law. So that's the process we're going to go through. With that, I'm going to now ask for Keith Nielsen of DACO. We'll unmute him And he's the representative of the applicant, town of Groton, for a coastal site plan review and a special exception. Special exception under Noank zoning is, well, Keith, he'll define the purposes of those. I don't have to keep doing that. Thank you, Keith. You're on.
Thank you. I'm Keith Nielsen from DACO Incorporated, and I was retained by the town of Groton to do some work for evaluating conditions at Esker Point Beach and make recommendations to improve conditions there. And we undertook a study a couple of years ago in that regard, and published a report to the town. And now the town would like to follow up on the recommendations, which were aimed at making quality improvements to Esker Point. Esker Point is one of the premier recreational facilities for the town, and the town would like to make it better any way they can. One of the ways they that has been identified is that the sand in the surface sand on the beach is fairly coarse in nature, and the raking that is necessary to keep the beach clean and available for recreational purposes includes raking, which tends to bring gravelly particles to the surface and make the sand uncomfortable to walk on, even to lie on and play in. And so one of the principal option that was the town wanted to explore was somehow importing more suitable sand to reconstruct the surface of the beach. I know reconstruct doesn't sound appropriate to a beach project like this, but by technically in the trade, that's what it's called. So the beach is a broad beach, several hundred yards, and with a variety of features, including the beach itself, the picnic area, the volleyball courts, which are well known and rigorously used. The site is surrounded by vegetation. It's bordered on the north by Route 215, a wooded area on Esker Point to the west, and to the south and east by Esker Bay and Fisher's Island Sound. There is some drainage issues. There are some drainage issues on the site, primarily water coming downslope from Route 215 and entering the site by the paved apron that provides access from the parking lot. Whenever it rains, it tends to keep the water table and hydraulic gradient in the site high, and it would be one of the targets to fix that. The site also suffers from erosion, wind erosion from the northwest, strong northwesterly storms and frontal passage, and from wave and inundation erosion, sometimes when waves are breaking up and washing back from the south and east. There is a fringe of dune grass to the southeast of the, actually at the easterly, along the easterly edge of the park. And this is a natural feature that has been cultivated to an extent by the town, and more is proposed. So the project is to move some of the coarser grained existing surface materials in the volleyball court out to the periphery and to backfill with fine-grained sand. The source of sand is Mumford Cove. They've undertaken maintenance dredging projects over the years and recycled the dredged material, which is finer grained sand than the Esker Point beach, and they've accumulated it on their main beach. They have more dredging projects that they have to do, one coming up very shortly, they hope, and so they have a surplus of sand that they are willing to donate to the town for the purposes of this project. Can you hear me over the clatter?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Anybody else have a
Okay.
problem?
There's
Okay.
something going on in the corner and it's just making noise with the printer. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Dana has a problem.
Let me find him. Dana, can you not hear him?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Dana Oviatt. I'm hearing a lot of clatter too. It's making it difficult for me to concentrate. And I think, not to name names, but I think it's coming from Dennis, who doesn't have his microphone muted, perhaps.
Well, he can hear if we mute him, so then that might solve the problem. Okay. Go ahead, Keith, continue, please.
Okay, sorry about that. So when I first met with the zoning official, Bill Mulholland, we talked about different ways this can be done and whether it would be best to show a larger project and anticipate it being phased, or come in for repeated permit applications to add increments when determined necessary. I suggested that we should probably show the whole project so that it wouldn't sneak up on anybody. And Bill agreed with that, like that approach. And so that's what I've shown. In the site plan, you'll see a number of references to, and I'm talking in the main part of the site plan now. The beach house is right in front of that is a pile of sand. This would be brought over from the Mumford Cove beach site in trucks and dumped on the beach and stockpiled into the uniform sloping mass that I've shown.
Excuse me a minute, Keith. When you want a document put up on the screen like that figure,
Okay.
just say so. We're prepared. We have them all teed up, ready to be put up when you need them.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
The two documents we have is your figure, your site plan, and then we have the 30-page document.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at the site plan right now. So if you can pull that up, I'll describe it from the screen.
Ooh, yeah. No, it's the other one, Larry. That one. There you go.
There we go. Okay. Good? Oh, good. Is that a scale that everybody can read okay?
Yeah.
The dark mass to the left of center is the stockpile that I'm referring to. I'm not sure if you can see the contours in there, but this is a pile of sand graded at roughly a 3-to-1 slope, so it's stable. And that is approximately what 2,000 cubic yards looks like in a stockpile like that. It was the intent to show that if the whole project was done at one time, that's what the stockpile would look like before the sand was spread uniformly across the beach. As I mentioned, one of the options that we considered was a phasing plan. If you spread about 500 cubic yards over the volleyball court area, it amounts to about a 6-inch change in grade. And that's really all that's needed initially. The remainder of the work would be left for subsequent years if and as the need became evident. The way this project would be done is that the existing coarse sand on the beach would be raked to the sides so that it would form a perimeter or a barrier, basically. I know this is, all relatively speaking, of this coarser grained material and a very slight depression of a couple of inches deep. Then this fine grained sand would be put on top of that basin or the depression, and graded into basically a uniformly crowned surface with the coarser material around the edges. The coarser material is much less susceptible to erosion, and so that would be the principal purpose of it. In addition, between the volleyball courts and the water line of the beach, that area in there would be only slightly regraded, but it would also be planted with more dune grass, so that the intent is to elongate the dune grass fringe along the south edge of the volleyball courts for the full length of the volleyball courts. When I was walking out on the site several months ago, it was interesting to note that the ground in the dune grass meadow is higher. You can feel as soon as you walk into it that you're walking into a higher ground condition. It's not feet higher, it's inches higher, but it is higher. And that indicates that the dune grass is doing exactly what it's supposed to do and what we planted it for several years ago, or a couple of years ago. And that is to trap blowing sand and keep it confined. Now, in the project, we have additional erosion control measures to keep that sand on the beach and not let it get windblown into the bay. And that is snow fencing. On our detail, right in the lower, just below the middle of the 24 by 36 inch plan, there is a snow fence detail, and it shows the snow fence in a zigzag pattern that would help to trap sand, whether the wind was from the south, southwest, or northwest. And that's the purpose of the zigzags. And the town actually bought snow fence for this purpose, and they put it out seasonally to maintain the fine grained sand as much as possible. The town is agreeable to and wants to monitor the site with surveys every year, and not just topography, but also a grain size analysis, so that they can keep track of what is going on the beach. I know that that is a concern, and I've spoken with Mr. Berry, the head of Parks and Rec, about it, and he's agreeable to doing that. And so I think that that's a good thing. I know that some of the citizens were concerned when we were doing our exploratory meeting last year and the year before. So what we're trying to do is improve the quality of the beach, and at the same time avoid negative impacts. We're well aware of what happened years ago with quantities of sand infilling the area of residential properties along Noble Avenue. And we had even done some of the dock permits where the docks were unusable when that sand accumulated there. And there's no denying that some of that sand came from this site. So we don't want that to happen again. The town doesn't want that to happen again. And they feel that this is an opportunity for them to improve the beach and at the same time not have a detrimental effect on the environment. And that's the purpose of the project. And as I said, it's more likely to be, the town really wanted to make sure that everybody understands we're not trying to do the whole 2,000 cubic yards at once. 500 cubic yards would give a 6-inch nominal grade change through the volleyball court area. And that's a good starting point. And I think we're all on board with that. We did explore some options for the sand. Sourcing is tough because if gravelly sand is used on a beach, it is not comfortable. Silica sand is comfortable. It's what people like about a beach. It's comfortable to walk on. It gives way under foot pressure, and it's comfortable to walk on. Gravelly sand is not, with angular particles and such. So local quarries were ruled out. dredging material from Esker Bay was ruled out because that material may be the right grain size, but it will also have a silt fraction and some organics and so on. And we don't want to create a dirty beach or something that creates odors and so on. So we were trying to use clean sand, and the Mumford Cove sand is clean. And we also want to create improvements to the drainage so that we are dealing with dispensing that or reducing the amount of water that can get into the site from Route 215 so that there's no hydraulic back pressure on the back of the site that would also lead to erosion. I think I've gone on enough about this. We do have erosion and sediment controls around the berming if berming is done. And I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, for this moment, I'm going to take questions from commissioners or Keith. And it's going to take me a bit of jumping back and forth. Dana? You have to unmute yourself, Dana. There
Hey,
you go.
Novia. Yeah, thanks. I'm trying. Hi, Keith.
How are you?
Good. I'm new to the zoning committee. I'm new to Noank by 6 years. So I'm just asking on, first of all, questions on behalf of perspective. Do we know when the beach was first established?
I do not remember exactly when the beach was established, but I think it was in the 60s.
Okay. And how many times since then has the beach had to be renourished or something like this done to it?
Again, I'm afraid I don't know all the statistics on that. I know that the town has some records, but I don't know the dates or the volumes that were added.
Okay. Well, in previous, you probably won't know this either, but in previous renourishment projects of what there were, did they also establish erosion controls like beach grass and fencing the way you're proposing now?
I know that when we first started working for the town on Esker Point, that we recommended that extension of the dune grass area from the southeast. And I don't know if the rest of this dune grass was a natural feature or if it was deliberately planted. I don't have the records on that.
Okay. I'm just curious if the beach were to be let go, this would be allowed to continue, what would the beach turn into? What would it be in 5 or 10 or 15 years?
Well, it's an artificial beach. It was largely a rocky discharge area for the creek that ran through the marsh owned by Spicer on the south side of Route 215 and north side of Marsh Road. And so ultimately, I believe if no maintenance work were done, it would probably return to something more like that than the beach that it is.
Okay. And then you're just going to do the first part of what may be a multiple year project. How many years are we talking about?
Well, that was the quandary that I found when I started talking to the zoning official about this, because as I mentioned, in order to improve the quality of the sand, we only need about 500 yards. The it could be that that the routine use and maintenance of the site that would need to be done every 5 to 10 years. I don't really know. The reason that I suggested to the town that they start doing annual surveys and grain size analysis is so that they can get some handle on this and begin to predict, empirically as well as with documentation, what is going on. And they're agreeable to that because they don't have a lot of documentation outside of the money that was spent. I think the last time sand was added was in the 90s, and I may be wrong on that, but that's the way I recall it. And so the initial phase would really only be for several hundred yards of material, 500 yards or so, and that would give a 6-inch covering of the fine grain sand. The if it was to be 250 or 300 yards, it'd be about 3 inches. It's proportional, and it can be approached in that proportional or phased manner.
So the decision about whether to go ahead with another sand application next year would depend upon the monitoring, or how would that
Yes,
work? Yeah.
I think that would be a fair assessment, but I'm not necessarily sure that that the sand would have to be recharged again next year. In the period of time that we've been watching it, the conditions, may have become a little bit more severe in terms of the coarseness of particles and so on. But it's not something that you can say, wow, look at the difference. Of course, we haven't had, a real significant storm with a southeast and south prolonged duration like Sandy and Irene in years. But I'm not thinking this is a once-a-year project. I'm thinking it's more like once every 3, 4, 5 years, and that the conditions are somewhat stable the way that they are being maintained right now by the town.
And you talked about hydraulic pressure, something like that. I can't recall the exact term you used in the sand. And I guess it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that if a lot of water from the street, fresh water, goes down into the sand, that it makes it more susceptible to erosion from waves and things like that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. If the water table is high, then the sand is somewhat buoyant.
Okay. And so how much of the erosion do you think is due to wind versus waves versus fresh water from the street coming down?
Well, I will say that about a year or a year and a half ago, actually, I guess it was 2 years ago, I was at Esker Point at the tail end of a fairly heavy rainstorm, and water was coming down Route 215, and it was coming right down that little paved asphalt apron that is the walkway from the main parking lot. And I was surprised to see that there was a meandering rivulet of water that was actually flowing across the beach. Clearly, the beach sand was saturated, and the water was flowing out. And so I had mentioned to Frank Boland, who I was working with on the project at the time, and said, if we can get some kind of a ADA acceptable apron, or something that looks like a speed bump, but connecting the two curbs of Groton Long Point Road, so that this water would not flow down that little asphalt apron, I think that would help a lot, and it would bring the water down the street further toward the parking lot and such, which is more capable of dispensing it. So
Right.
that was the condition that I observed, and I knew that we could help it with a little bit of maintenance work by the town.
And is that in your plan, that apron?
It's not shown on this plan. It's something that I've discussed with Mark Berry, and it's on the town property. It's on the road.
That's it for me for now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other commissioners? Hang on, let me see them all. Nip? Gotta unmute yourself. There you go.
Nip Tanner, as I understand it, the prime driver of this is to improve the sand in the volleyball area.
Yeah, it's to improve the surface sand on the beach. Yeah, and it was originally aimed at the volleyball area. It could be applied anywhere on the beach. That this fine grained sand could be spread and be the top surface. It would have the same effects.
But as I understand, the proposal is to remove rougher sand from the volleyball area and replace it with this finer sand and take the rougher sand and put that back on the main beach. Is that correct?
Well, if you look at the site plan, can you still see the site plan up?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you see the dark lines that are going south toward the bottom of the page from the dark area where the stockpile is? You
Yes,
see those dark lines? And those lines cut across the beach and then go over on the inside of the dune, on the north side of the dune grass. Those are new contours showing that the sand could be spread, and I had envisioned that it would be spread over. It could be spread over the entire beach. Okay.
that's the rougher sand that's being removed from the volleyball area, so the finer sand can go into the volleyball areas. Is that correct?
The rougher sand would be on the upland from the high tide line and the coastal jurisdiction line. It could be for the whole length of the beach. And then the fine sand behind it.
Okay, somehow I'm not expressing my question clearly. My understanding is rougher sand is being removed from the volleyball area. It's going to be moved into some part of the rest of the beach, and where it came out, where that sand came out of the volleyball area is where the Mumford Cove finer sand is going in. Is that
Okay, well, that is the way I described the project. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that the fine grain, the reconstruction of the beach with the finer grain sand on the top is the same principle can be applied to the whole beach. Okay, that the rougher grain sand would be all moved out to the periphery of the beach, and the surface of the beach for most of its area would be this finer grain sand. So the same sort of treatment that the volleyball courts were originally targeted for the volleyball court, the same approach can be applied to the whole beach.
But we are dealing with a specific proposal, and I'm trying to make sure I understand exactly what you said was going to happen in phase one.
Okay, well, the description on the site plan, if you look at paragraph 1, it says to spread this sand over the beach. Okay, it does not limit it to the volleyball court area.
Okay,
The volleyball court, the initial prospects were how do we improve the characteristics of the volleyball court, and this sand was the most desirable answer to that question. But the same benefits of improving all of the beach could be approached the same way.
okay.
All right.
My assumption is that this finer grained sand is more easily becomes airborne. Is that and blown around?
Yes. Yes. It more easily than the coarse grain sand. That's absolutely true.
Okay. So if we are to put the finer grained sand into an area which has a lot of vigorous physical activity, it's more likely to become airborne than if we hadn't put it there. Is that correct?
Yep, that would be true.
Okay. Beach grass. I went down to the beach, Esker Beach, this afternoon, and it appeared to me that there's what looks like older, dense beach grass toward the east end of the volleyball courts. And then there's an extension of what I interpreted to be recently planted beach grass, which is not nearly as dense as the grass to its east. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that is correct. And if when you were walking in that less dense grass, you probably noticed that the plugs were at roughly 1 foot centers.
Correct.
It looked like a patchwork job. That
Yes.
was the planting activities that were done, I believe, by the high school. And so, you know, they were doing that as part of their community involvement on a scientific project. So,
Any idea
what-
how long ago that was done?
I'm sorry.
Any idea how long ago that was done?
I think it was done 1.5 years ago.
Okay. My reaction to it was, it looks like the hair on the top of my head. Yes, there is some, but there's not a lot. And
Well,
I'm hopeful that with time, unlike my head, it will get thicker and more useful. But you know, with it on 1 inch centers, I'm sure it's better than nothing in terms of protecting the sand from wind erosion. But I suspect it's not anywhere near as effective as the older grass, which is much denser.
I would agree with you, and that's one of the reasons why we put all that snow fencing on the site plan, so that wherever this beach, this finer grain sand is put, we will have a means of keeping it there. And the dune grass, I saw a lot of this dune grass when it was first planted, and I'm pleased to see that that it is growing. And I was also pleased to see that the ground elevation was noticeably higher in the dune grass than it was on the immediately adjacent beach. So I mean, it was positive feedback from my perspective that the dune grass is doing what it should be doing. And I agree with you. We could and should do more. And until that, you know, the new plantings take place and so on, and until they get rigorously established, that snow fence is an important part of this project to keep the sand on the site where we put it, and you know, keep it on the high beach.
Okay, but the snow fencing, what period of the year will that be installed?
It should be installed now.
I didn't see any this afternoon.
Well, this is the right time of year to install it. The beach grass is dormant right now, and so the best effect that we're going to get from the snow fence is when the beach is not being used, and we can put this barrier out there to just kind of keep the sand on the sandy surface.
Okay, I understand that the snow fencing is, again, better than nothing. But my concern would be if it were installed seasonally, and I don't know what that would be, from mid-November to mid-March or something. We have a lot of wind events outside that period of the year. So yes, it's better than nothing, but it's not like a permanent improvement because of its seasonality.
Yep, I agree. It is an advantage, and it does. The nice thing about the snow fence is it has a higher reach, so that it actually can more effectively trap more sand, or not trap it, but knock it out of the airborne suspension system, and I look at them as complementary. That and the reason that I've got the snow fence so close to the dune grass is so that it will help sand to accumulate by the dune grass, which hopefully will encourage the dune grass to grow more thick in that area as well.
Okay, another question. When I originally read the description and read the word berm, my mental picture of that was something of a raised elevation, sort of a modest sand dune. I don't know why that's the picture that came to mind, but that was. And then when I looked at it this afternoon and found it was all flat, I was, I don't know, somewhere between surprised and disappointed. What are your thoughts about having a raised area that's planted with the grass to provide a more substantial barrier?
To tell you the truth, I'm not enough of an expert to know if there is a zone where the dune grass is most comfortable. And so my efforts have really been to replicate and expand the characteristics that I see on the beach, presuming that the dune grass will be able to survive in that area. It is possible, for example, if that area to the southeast of the easterly end of the volleyball courts, that perhaps that could be raised more and would still accommodate the dune grass. I've seen dune grass grow on high dunes and low dunes, and but like I said, I was trying to replicate the area where the grass is successfully growing now. That was the basis of my plan.
Understood. Okay, one final question from me. Obviously, there's a potential to get a lot of sand from Mumford Cove, but we would only have use for a quarter of it approximately in year one. What's the rest of the deal with Mumford Cove? Where does the rest of the sand go that they want to get rid of? And what's our
that's something that we're going to have to work out. Originally, there was another proposal that sand could be stockpiled in the parking lot over across the street, so that it could be brought out conveniently when needed. And I know I've been down to this part of town on some days in the summer when that parking lot is absolutely chock full. And I just mentioned to Mr. Berry that it might be beneficial if we just had an arrangement with Mumford Cove that when we needed sand, we could go get some, and that way we wouldn't have to stockpile it on the beach or in the parking lot or otherwise usurp other activities or facilities. And so I put in a call to Mumford Cove to see if they would be agreeable to that. So hopefully there wouldn't be any need to stockpile anything. We could take it as we need it and put it where it needed to go.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Sure.
Okay, Blake or Beth? Beth? Okay, you're unmuted, and then we'll get Blake after you.
Okay, thank you. In response to Dana Obiet, who had asked you a question, I think he asked you when the last time sand was added, and you had said that it was in the 90s. But I was looking back through my records, because I know that you've come before the board recently, in the last couple of years, with a similar type project where you guys wanted to add sand to the beach. Do you recall that?
I don't have a clear memory of it right now.
Okay, specifically, I looked back and I found minutes of a regular meeting that occurred on May 22nd, 2018. And at that point, you had asked, again, there was going to be an installation of 60 square feet of snow fencing and planting grass and bringing in sand. And the minutes don't seem to reflect how much. But that would only be approximately 2 years ago. So where is all this sand going that we're putting on there? I know it washes away, but where does it go when it washes away?
The reason that we, to tell you the truth, I don't know where the sand is going. I mean, the logical and first response answer would be, well, it's going out into the bay, but I can't prove that. What I do know is that I've watched the raking operation and I've watched the gravelly particles of sand appear on the beach as a part of that raking. And I'm thinking that some of this sand is down in the beach and is tightly consolidated down there. And so bottom line is I don't know. And I don't know if sand was added in 2018.
Okay.
I know that we had applied for it, but I don't know that it was added.
Okay, it was granted. So you're saying you don't know whether or not the town actually followed through with that?
I don't know if they followed through with it.
Okay. And what about, I mean, it would seem logical, would you agree that some of the sand at least is going out into the bay area in front of the beach? I mean, some of it has to be, right?
It certainly seems logical that it's downhill.
Has the town given any consideration to, instead of taking sand from, say, Mumford Cove and bringing it over, just dredging what's already in front of it? I mean, and bringing it back up onto the beach?
We have given consideration to that, and I'm afraid that would be an unpopular approach because the material out in the bay is very fine sand. There's also silt and minerals and organic material out there, and I'm afraid if that material was brought up on the beach, it would we would create an odor problem, and the sand, until it bleached and was cleansed by rain and stuff, it would be a darker color and pretty unattractive. I'm afraid it would be an unappealing option to dredge the material out of the bay. And the other thing is, I've tried to get the DEP to consider that when we were doing our study a couple of years ago, and I could not get them to entertain dredging for beach restoration purposes or beach restoration reconstruction purposes. So
Okay. And
we
I just,
dismissed that as an
Beth,
option.
could I interrupt here just for a minute? Because I want to follow the nature of your question while it's fresh in Keith's mind.
sure.
You asked about dredging out in the bay to use as nourishment back on shore. Did you also consider dredging from the sand, which is obviously sand, from the front of those homes at Noble Avenue? Is that part of your question? And if it wasn't, if Keith could address that.
We did talk to the DEP about dredging sand from this cove. And by that, I mean from Spicer's Breakwater over to the tip of Esker Point. And it was not favorably received by the DEP. And because our approach had been, well, can we consider, does the dredging have the same priority if the material is dredged from one part of the same system and used on the upland in the same system, anticipating that the sand out there in the bay came from the beach. And like I said, it was not favorably received, and it was pretty clear to me that pursuing a permit in that regard was going to was not going to be successful.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Continue, please.
Thank you. I just had one other question. So, assuming that we approve this and you're allowed to, or the town's allowed to truck in more sand, are there any other measures besides those which you've laid out here, the dune grass and the snow fencing and a berm? I mean, is there anything else that we could do to prevent that sand from going back into the bay and going into the Noble area, Avenue area? Because if I know that you're probably aware that there's been some circulation of documents by people who live on Noble Avenue, photographs that depict, just in the last 10 years, a serious change in the beach over there and the height of the seafloor right up abutting those properties. I mean, something has got to be doing that, and I can only imagine that this is part of it. What else can be done to prevent that? Because whatever we've been doing in the past doesn't seem to be working.
Well, if some kind of a cover could be put over the beach, I don't imagine that would be very popular, but it would certainly be maintenance intensive, because it would have to have some kind of weights and such on it to keep the sand. But that would prevent the moving air from coming in contact with the sand. And the sand, when it's blowing, is very close to the ground. It's only a matter of inches off the ground, which is one of the reasons why the snow fence works so well, because the lower 10% of the exposed height of the snow fence is what traps the sand. And so maybe more snow fencing would do that. Like I said, some kind of a covering, like they use on landfills, might help it. And I'm not sure of what the other options are. Certainly more dune grass will help it. And the nice thing about that is it's so natural and it adds to the aesthetics of the beach. So that's the one that I think is the best. And if we could, by encircling the entire volleyball court area with the dune grass, at least we minimize the escape route for the sand, and you know, gradually the dune would build up in height as well.
Okay, Beth?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Blake, unmute, please. There you go. Blake Powell.
So a few questions. One is, which Beth already brought up though, but I was curious on how this proposal relates to the one that we approved a couple of years ago. If you don't know that now, if you could even get back to us on that, that'd be helpful.
I will.
Another question I have too. So the site plan that we have talks about 2,000 square feet or cubic feet. Is that correct? 2,000
cubic yards.
Or 2,000 cubic yards. So where does the 2,000 number come from? If we're only planning on doing 500 right now, and if we were to approve the 500, would you be coming back each time that you wanted to do more?
Well, one of the advantages to that approach is that it would create a method of documenting a precise event, and meaning the beach recharging, restructuring. Completion of that would yield a survey, and the same area would be resurveyed each successive year, so that we could tell you what was happening with the beach, and you know, hopefully it would you know, be pretty obvious, not only with the topographic features and contours, but also with the grain size. Because if we start off the project putting the beach sand down, and we have a grain size analysis on the beach sand, and we come back a year later and do a new topographic survey, and we find out that the grain size is different, then we have an idea that of where other sand might be coming from. If it's coarser, we would, which we would expect, it might mean that there is some blow up, some wave and high wind induced agitation that is throwing sand up on the beach, and that would tend to make the fine grained sand coarser.
I understand that. That makes sense. But I guess my question is, are you applying for 500 cubic yards or 2,000 cubic yards? And where did the 2,000 number come from? Is that what you anticipate would be needed over the course of 20 years, perhaps?
The 2,000 cubic yards was my original estimate for placing a uniform 8-inch topping over the entire beach from northeast at Noble Avenue to south at on Esker Point.
Blake, could I follow that if I could? Does this mean your proposal needs to be revised, Keith?
Well, it could be revised, or perhaps the commission could entertain just approving 500 cubic yards, and then we do the monitoring and see if more work could or should be done, and when, and then we come back for another project in the future under the same process, and subject to the same scrutiny of the neighborhood, as well as the commission and the town surveying department, Department of Public Works, and the Parks and Rec.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Blake.
That's fine. Another question I have too, if you could clarify once again, I think Nick talked about this, but once you remove the coarse grained sand from the volleyball area, you're going to kind of create a perimeter with that, a border of some sort. And exactly how high and wide do you anticipate that being? And is it going to move the coarse grained sand into other parts of the beach that are going to make the areas outside the volleyball court less comfortable?
The, starting with the volleyball court, the raking would take place in, first of all, can you all still see the site plan that I've got shown here?
Yeah,
Okay, you see on the beach perimeter, below the new grade contours, there are arrows that are facing up the hill, basically up the beach toward the mound and toward the volleyball court. Those are raking direction arrows. What we were trying to do was make sure that material was being raked back onto the property rather than raked out toward the beach, where it would end up or could end up eroding out into Esker Bay. But the proposal is to rake inside the volleyball court and on the main beach, if that is approved and pursued, rake the course material from the middle of those areas out toward the edges, both toward the street and toward the dune grass and toward the vegetation over on the west side, so that the coarser material is along the edges to make those areas more stable, and then infill, and it would be raising the grade maybe a couple of inches. And then when the new beach, the finer beach sand is placed, it would be placed in that depression between the slightly elevated perimeter, and that would be the primary recreation area. All right, it's a very broad, low berm and depressed area behind it. It's it's even going to be, you'll see it right after it's graded, because all the material will be undisturbed. But once you place the fine grain material in the fill area, and it's back to a couple of inches higher, everything is just going to look like it's now a couple of inches higher. We're talking a very small scale in terms of grade changes.
okay, but
Is that clear?
well, is there no berm then of the coarse grain sand
It's,
between the water and where the new sand is going to go? Because we're raking it all up out into the sides.
well, now wait a minute. If you look just to the water side of the stockpile area of sand,
Right?
you see that thing that looks like a hot dog there?
Yeah, and that, yeah, where the number 6 is and that contour.
That is the erosion berm. That is where we want to intentionally put a ridge of sand right behind the silt fence, so that there won't be any flow tendency, for rainfall runoff.
But that's just temporary, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that just temporary?
Oh yeah, the berm and the stockpile are both temporary. They're not the final features of the beach. And so if the project were to be done 500 cubic yards at a time or something on that order, that berm would only be out there for a couple of days until it was spread uniformly across the beach or across the volleyball courts or whatever the selected area was for spreading the sand.
Okay, and last question on the seasonal silt fence, snow fence.
Yes.
Do you know how many years has that been going on?
I'm afraid I don't know. I remember seeing it last year, but I don't remember when it was installed first. And I'm afraid I don't know.
That's fine. Okay, thanks, Keith. That's all.
Okay, I have a series of questions, but I'm also sensitive to the time, and I want to make sure that people, members of the public who want to speak on this have the opportunity, and I'm sensitive to the fact that two of them are pushing towards 2 a.m. now where they are. So I'm going to defer my questions until we've gotten the public comment as well. That may go to some subsequent meeting and it may not, but a lot of my questions have been answered. So if there's no objection, I'm going to now take public comments on this. And I don't know who's going to wave first, but okay, I see Kirsten O'Brien, and I'm going to ask you to unmute your microphone. And Larry, okay, you're going to have to stop screen sharing, Larry, because I'm going to go to screen share base. I'll put her document up. All right.
I don't know, are we unmuted?
You're unmuted, but you got to wait a minute until I get your document.
No,
up.
no, that's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
Just lost the view. Where did the? There it is.
All right. Here is your document, and now what can you all see? Do you see the document or do you see speakers? You see, okay,
See speakers right now.
speakers. Okay. Here's
Nice
the
bicycle
document.
tape.
And now the question is speakers. Larry, how am I going to do that? So I have the document up for reference, but like you had it with everybody at the top.
Well, first of all, double click it to share the document.
I did. Oh, you're not seeing the document at all?
Nope, nope.
All right, let's try that again. I had clicked on share screen. Now I got nothing.
Share it, the other guy could share it too.
Anybody see that document now?
Oh,
No. Great.
Could someone else maybe put it up?
Well, it was so big that I didn't parcel it to Larry. We tried it out before the meeting and it worked. So I'm doing something wrong here.
Okay.
So Larry, you're off screen share. If I click on this, I'm going to, well, shall I click on only host can share? That seems self-defeating.
I just switched it to all participants. I don't think that was it, but try that. Now try it.
Okay. Is that any better?
nope.
Darn it.
What if I share? It's a monster because of the photos. Sorry about that.
No, but
You want me to bring it up from OneDrive?
yeah, try that. Okay, here we go.
There's hope.
This one?
No.
No.
It's
Yes, it's
one.
that one.
special permits right there. There you go.
Ooh. Looks like a lot.
All right, he can expand that though, so it fills the whole screen.
Yeah.
Just spread it with your fingers, I think.
Yeah, no, I don't have a,
Oh, you're not on you don't have a touchpad. Okay, there you go.
It might be a view increase.
yeah, it didn't seem to view it. I did hit the zoom. It didn't,
Okay.
Hmm.
Yo, ooh,
That's better. You were there.
that was exciting.
yeah, it clicked and then,
Yeah, might be just too big.
You got an, at the bottom, Larry, there's a,
There you go.
okay. How's
okay.
that?
So, may I speak?
Yes, identify yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Kristen Nygaard O'Brien, live at 99 Noble Avenue. My husband George, and we are currently stationed in England. So I apologize for the late time. We've owned the house there since 58. Watched the beach form in 75. Watched the estuarial parking lot turn into a parking lot across the way. So we're familiar with the area quite well. If you're looking for fine grained sand, come over to our house. We know where it is. We'll go right down this list and I'll just hit the highlights if I may, trying to answer some of the points that were brought up in the proposal. So the first section talks about reestablishing a beach. And in fact, this was a saltwater estuary, and it very cleanly not only took the water from across 215, which was also a salt marsh, as we said, now parking lot, but the other side as well, Spicer's area. And there's two massive culverts underneath there that still, I bet you, my eye teeth are functioning, which is how the water gets in there so well. So those culverts are seen in the 1969 plan, which is not a very pretty thing, but it's 2 or 3 pages down. We'll get to that later. The project must prove sand retention before any sand comes over is our dying hope. The sand migrates, there's no question, and we need to retain it. If any sand is brought over before retention occurs, we will not survive. We're at a tipping point. Next paragraph down, raking is, as in 2016, both Keith, myself, Lynn Anderson, which is the other neighbor on this call, and Frank Boland, the oceanographic expert, all discussed how raking, in fact, was very difficult because it lofted the sand then to migrate better. The reason we have coarse grained sand is because the fine grained sand migrates first. Plenty of fine grained sand has been put on the beach. It simply migrates because there's standing water every which way. Going down, so you'll see the words, some fine grained sand, it migrates. And the volleyball courts are waterlogged. It's natural place for the water to reside. Couple inches, still be waterlogged. We'll go on down if you'd be kind with the document. Thank you. Erosion and sediment controls, fencing, fine, but I don't think it's going to hold it well enough because we don't have tolerance any longer. We have gained 8 feet of sand. Sand was not indigenous in the cove. Any sand that is in the cove has come from importation. All the sand in front of our house, all 8 feet, has been imported and brought over by Mother Nature from the beach. Construction methodology. It's important that any beach sand that is brought in for replenishment, I see that the beach sand is coming in. The beach grass is going to be planted later. Again, I think the establishment of that dune is going to be our only hope. Go on down because we'll start seeing photos. Here's where your sand is. You see how light it is? Anytime you fly over, maybe you didn't fly over in Pilgrim Airlines when they were there, but the sand used to go out just a little bit, and then it exceeded Esker Point, and then it got up to Mouse Island. And now this fairly recent Google Earth shows it out beyond Mouse Island. That's all our sand, in case you're wondering where it's going. I don't know how much 1,000 grass clumps will cover, but just like the naturally existing sand, just like the natural occurring sand on the far east, and the planted smaller portion heading west from there needs to be continued all the way across, because the water is moving from the far east all the way over to the picnic area. We'll go on down and you'll be able to see that. Here is waterlogged volleyball courts. And you can see the puddle standing water in the picnic area on the next page, but you can see all these, those are 1 foot deep footprints. That's how waterlogged it is. And that is sweet water sitting on top on the beach side of the seaweed going into the ocean, because I tasted it. Now this is taken 2 years ago. And you were asking on some questions. 1975, I believe it was, that the beach was, they started truck loading sand in. Lynn, were you there? 85 is when my father, for the most part, stopped the sand coming in truckloads on an annual basis with the help of Lynn Anderson and previous residents. No erosion controls were put in place because the grass area was not raked, grass grew. The raking removes the grass. And that's not good. We need the grass. I don't quite understand why we need 5 or 10 years to know what will happen. As initially was discussed, in fact, the beach does want to go back to being an estuarial salt marsh. It was a fantastic one, and it had lots of life, scallops, etc. And the sand is clogging what nature wants to have there. I'm reading my notes from what people asked. 2018 was when the sand was added. We so happened to visit America on November 2018, and I have photos, not in this image, of sand piles that were brought in on the volleyball court. What this section shows is conflicting application, and you're seeing that there's 2,000 cubic yards on 10,000 square feet, and then you see on 80,000 square feet. So we were not able to comprehend if it was 8 inches or 5 foot depth that we were speaking of adding sand, just because both were mentioned in the proposal. We really cannot survive. What the 2 photos next to each other are, we were trying to comprehend what 250, we possibly were thinking lineal feet of berm. We need the berm all the way across the wet area, and everything you see, in fact, these photos still show, do you see the wetness in all the areas of the sand? All that darker area is wet, it's water. And what moves is water. And in the summer, sand clouds, by the way, do rise 10, 15 feet in the air. Not easy to take a photo of. I've tried. They don't show in the photos, but they're beautiful and tall and quite stunning. Go on down, stockpiling. The sand wave attenuator, honestly don't know if that will work or not, because how is sand going to hold back sand moving? I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but we are the recipient of an awful lot of sand. So I do know from Frank Boland that the natural beach grass does, in fact, is the most effective thing. And we see dunes all over the world, don't we? And they're just as effective as the one on the East End. So dune grass before sand. Any sand that is brought in will not be temporary to the beach. It will be temporary, but it will be forever on our beach, unfortunately. Going on down, no adverse impacts. Go back up just a tad, back down just a, that's good. No adverse impacts are foreseen with this development. No mitigative measures required. Rising tides of sand. Only no mitigative measures will be required when no sand erodes into West Cove. So here is a picture of our house, and that's the 8 foot of sand rise on the seawall. 1986, my father just installed a brand new wooden seawall. And 93, you can see in the middle, and 2016. Our next door neighbor is 103, and there's a saltwater estuary in the background, as well as the docks that are of course long gone. 94, you can still see my father's wooden docks and a beautiful dock setup next door. 97, there is no seawall, it's gone, it's underwater. And then towards 91, Lynn Anderson, 1964, the blue arrow shows sand and how much it's risen, and that's your 8 foot. And here, excuse me, is the 1969 black and white aerial footage from the town maps. And you'll see the culvert underneath the word M for marsh. And I believe there's a second culvert for sure. There it is. That's, yes, there's 2 culverts there. No, the one culvert is next to the word marsh. That's the arrow with the triangle. And the second natural flow is, as you say, Keith, on the crosswalk. But the third flow, you'll see coming from the word, the triangle on the left, you see all the heavy fingers of water. Water flows in off the parking lot as well, behind the beach building. So you have 3 directions of water, and that basically holds in the area of sand, which is from absolute east to absolute west. The whole area is an absolute sand holding area. And what moves the sand from the beach to our area, which is
The code from the tide.
east, my father called a sump, and it's the engine. And you'll see a photograph of that engine, and it's a snake of current. At this time, it was along our seawalls. Now it's further out, but it brings the sand down. And if you go down a little bit further, you'll see this is a 2008 photo. I dove. I used to dive off of an upper beach seawall into a stony, smooth bottom water. There's now 4 inches between that upper deck and the sand. Go on down. These are my notes from the 2016 meeting where I met Keith and Frank. And Lynn Anderson and I wrote and drew ideas, including grass berms that bypass in order to allow for walkers to walk through, but the bypassing berms would hold back the migrating sand. And so I've highlighted statements that Frank Boland, the expert, has made here, stating how to go about it. The ongoing mechanical raking of sand is occurring with bigger and better machines. Frank Boland suggested that, however, regular raking is not good because it encourages fine particles to come to the surface, and then they blow away or wash away, which is why you have the coarse sand remaining. And it makes it very vulnerable to the migration that we are seeing. If you go down a bit, please, thank you. This is what happens when you lose 8 foot of seawall that used to protect your house. we don't have a tolerance any longer. We had 8 foot that we could give or wait for 50 years, that maybe it won't be an issue. We don't have that option anymore, unfortunately. So you can't wait and see. I can show you what happens. Here are the photos. Go on down if you'd be kind. Is that it? Oh, good. Okay, thank you about that. The coarse grain sand is what remains. The old grass is dense and the new grass is a great place to start, but we need to keep bringing it all the way across because of the natural water flow of the sand. 18 inches, there was a question, gosh, should we take sand from Noble Avenue? 2007, they did just that. I can send the photos if you'd like. There was a huge argument. I had 5 different DEP and other alphabet soups standing on the front of the lawn and on the sand. And they only decided that they could take 18 inches because they didn't know where the sand came from. And all sand in the cove comes from the beach. So they took away 18 inches and it took a big machinery to do so for a couple of days. Within 7 days, we had a storm and 19, 20 inches came back. Removing it isn't a long fix. Sand is not indigenous in the cove. The nature of it will reside in our area. Raking, based on what Frank said, raking the sand, period, destabilizes the solidity of the sand. So if you're raking up, the tractors don't rake up. I'm sure you know that. The tractors rake parallel to the water. I think is there an opportunity for people to ask questions? Is that appropriate?
Yes, but once you're done with your presentation?
I think that's a place to start it.
All right.
I'd like to be
I
guided.
want to look at the other people in here and see who else wants to speak for or against the proposal before I start taking questions from each individual, because we're clearly going to run out of time quick. So let me see. By show of hands, wave of hands, who else wants to speak on this public hearing? You're gonna have to wave your hand in front of the screen. I do not see anyone. Let me unmute a couple of people here. Dennis Gann and Lynn's iPhone, you need to unmute and tell me if you want to speak on this at this public hearing. Dennis? Lynn's iPhone? Okay. Not seeing anything. So, all right, questions, commissioners of Kirsten? Show of hands, whoever wants to ask questions. Dana? You have to unmute yourself, Dana.
I know,
Okay.
you keep on telling me I can't.
Okay. Dana Oviatt.
Dana Oviatt. This is a dumb question, but you keep on referring to how waterlogged the sand is. And I'm trying to figure out how that relates to the erosion problem. Is that the hydraulic pressure that we're talking about that moves the sand or not?
You betcha. And I think it's I truly feel it's the biggest mover of the sand. I'm not a scientist, but I think that the sand movement occurs because it's really viscous and it moves towards the ocean. And when it then sits up like a golf ball on a tee, then the water action takes it the final moments into the cove. But to get the sand from the roadside all the way down to the ocean, it's a combination of raking, wet water movement, and wind.
Okay,
And I don't find that hydraulic, it's not just coming off of the runoff. That's the point. There's three main sources of water in the three corners, if you will. And that needs to be, it cannot be attended necessarily. Yes, the berm might be great up at the top of the crosswalk, but you also have to cut off the water from the parking lot on by the building. And then there's a buried culvert that they've closed off in the 60s. It's underneath a marsh road. So,
yeah, go ahead.
so I was gonna say, so that's the engine of your hydraulic movement.
At one point you talk about, sorry. Okay. Additional sand across the waterlogged area. No sand should be brought in until a permanent beach grass berm is established. So you're talking about more than what's being proposed here. And if that's so, what exactly are you talking about?
What Keith, Lynn Anderson, and I spoke about in 2016, 17 were bypassing islands, if you will, or berms or areas of beach grass that would be established so that it would be acting just like the dune grass on the east end, which everyone recognizes is very successful in holding the sand. And that's why it's, of course, higher, thicker, denser. And the reason the sand retention has to be established before sand is introduced. That's the big deal. We're bringing in sand and then we're going to try and hold it somewhere. The extension to the seagrass, to the seagrass went up to 4 courts, if I recall correctly, but there are 9 or 10 courts. The paperwork says 10. We see 9 on the plan. The berms need to extend up all 9 courts, but water is still flowing from the courts towards the ocean. That's what this area does. Sand migrates, water migrates. So where the black shaded area is in front of the building, extremely waterlogged, and water coming off of the parking lot. Massive water damage is shown there every year as well, coming from the parking lot down into the beach. So there's steps, there's absolute steps of carved sand and riblets, wider than your leg in every direction, which is just what we saw in 1969 map. It's the same engine.
So just to clarify, you would plant grass first before bringing in any sand, correct? That's part of your point.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And then you would plant more grass, and where would that grass go? I'm curious as to what the solution would be.
If I may ask to have the paper document rolled down to the 2 identical photos, please. It illustrates there. Next one, I believe. Keep going, keep going. Bloop, that's it. So trying to understand the 250 lineal feet, we didn't understand, but the right-hand imaging shows that there's 378, I believe it was, lineal feet distance between the existing peninsula of seagrass on the lower half of this image connecting to the upper area of the seagrass on the upper area. Does that make sense? So if you can see closely, there's a yellow line that goes up to the blue straight line coming out of the building.
Yep.
And then from that blue straight line, yes, sir, there it is. And then from that blue straight line, yep, there it is. And that 1, 2, those 2 angles, those 2 lengths equal 378 lineal feet. Approximately, we're on Google Maps measuring, I apologize. But the idea is that we would do bypassing berms so that people have access to the water, but it would be a water retaining, sand retaining structure that is natural, much like the East End, which is very successful. We can't risk, oh gosh, it didn't work, let's do it better this time. That's the dickens of this.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why
thank-
we've done everything we can to stop sanding being added over the years. We've failed a couple times, but for the most part, we've stopped it since the mid-90s.
Okay, other commissioners, comment or questions? Art Tanner, Nip Tanner.
Nip Tanner, Kristen, thank you very much for your very detailed presentation and explanation of your concerns. With your permission, I went and looked at your property this afternoon and noted, as you have said and the photographs show, that the sand is, I don't know, maybe a foot below the level of your backyard at this point. What was it like during Sandy and Irene with the height of sand that close to the height of your lawn and the foundation of your house?
Was Irene the one that flooded the yard?
think, yeah.
Was it Irene? Irene encircled our house with water. And Sandy, like other big storms, brought sand right into the lower steps that are now part of our lawn. So we had sand in our lawn. Our next door neighbors were flooded.
And threw junk up on the lawn.
Yeah,
Some of your neighbors further east have more of the original seawall height. Do they suffer less than you do in the case of a storm or height?
Yeah, what you're seeing is that as sand accumulates on us, it fills to a point and it extends and it accumulates and it extends. So you can go down to the large aerial photo on the bottom of the next page, I believe it is. And you'll just see how the sand continues to extend down. Let's see, I guess it's, there it is. You can see how the sand just continues on down at that lower black and white photo. It's a big triangle of sand. And it's very easy to look at that and realize how it will continue to flow and grow. It literally, after a storm, it looks like a snake has carved its way through your front now sand area, because there's a current that comes through there.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, Blake or Beth? Blake, unmute.
So, if I understood you correctly, you said that in 2018, they did bring in sand?
Yeah, I don't know anything because we were living in England by that point. We came home for our home leave in November, and there were mounds of sand. Lynn Anderson may be able to answer more of that than I, but the mounds of sand were on the volleyball court. After that, I couldn't tell you much.
Okay, so we don't know exactly how much and whether or not there are other mitigation or erosion mitigation measures in place, similar snow fence, or it sounds like all this, there's the pre-existing seagrass, but then there's a lot of new stuff, but that probably was not in place then?
No, the seagrass was put in as the small addition. The original seagrass you can see here in this 2008 photo, and then the difference between the gray black and white photo on the bottom of this illustration page and the site map, there's a little additional lobe there, and that was the new seagrass. I believe 2017 it was added, and the fencing went in with it to help establish it. And that was a good sufficient amount because there were only that many volleyball but then they kept adding volleyball courts and the water is still moving.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. I'm almost afraid to ask them because I think two of them are going to make me look like an absolute buffoon, but that's never stopped me before. So I'm going to ask these anyway because they raise in my mind. Some people would pay good money to have government give them a beach out in front of their home. And they didn't have to pay for it and they didn't have to go through permitting. I've been told people in Fairfield County fight like tigers to try and get a beach in front of their house and they get denied in the permit process, yet just by accident, you've ended up with one. What am I missing here? Are you boaters and you want deep water to dock a boat in there as opposed to having a beach that you could go out and sit down and enjoy?
I agree, it's a lovely beach, but unfortunately it continues to encroach and it will take over our front of our house. That's the problem, is that was it too much of a good thing, I believe is the expression.
Yeah, okay.
That's the difficulty, is that it's continuing to grow.
And the wave
Yep.
action. Awesome.
And so with the wave action and the loss of protection of seawall, we
Yeah,
are very exposed and things land
yeah,
like sailing boats land on our front lawn,
yeah.
like 30-foot sailboats.
That's the other question I had. And I should know this, but I don't. And I'm not, believe me, I'm not being facetious or trite with it, but water seeks its own level. And, you have high tide, low tide, and you have storm surge. I'm not sure how the beach that has grown there exacerbates that problem as opposed to the severity of storms because of, take your pick, whether it's global warming or climate change or not. Is it because the sand, in your view, gives waves more chance to get up in your yard? I mean, your seawall hasn't gotten any lower and water is approximately at its same level. So I'm missing something big here. And maybe it's because I'm juggling all these balls. I'm just not seeing it clearly. But why is it, in your view, that the sand being there as opposed to when it wasn't there has any more or less impact on water showing up in your yard when you get a storm surge?
It's not just the water, it's the sand that's going to come up. It continues to come. So we're going to get snowed under. Also, we find things come up things are coming up because we don't have our 8 foot of seawall. That's why you build seawalls, is to protect the ocean from intruding, if you will. And we're losing our protection for intrusion. I'm not sure I'm explaining it properly. My husband's an engineer, maybe he can.
I'm still thinking of water level as opposed to whether it's sand or deep water off your wall. The wall height hasn't changed. I get the point that sand washes over and that's a mess in your yard as opposed to water. I understand that. And a boat or whatever that washed up could wash over the wall, but that would happen. I mean, I live on a property that's very similar to what you're talking about. I understand, storm surge throwing things up on your yard. I'm trying to figure out what it is about this sand that makes that worse. But having said that, I think it's kind of getting aside myself, because as chairman, after having talked to our CEO and our attorney, I do have to make a couple of points here, and now's probably as good a time as any. This process that we're in tonight has to be based on the proposal in front of us tonight. It looks like you have a legitimate concern that goes back, could be 50 years, and you haven't gotten it reconciled. But whatever we do or decide in this current process can't be designed to be a remedy for the past actions that didn't work. You have a gripe with maybe DEP and maybe with the town, but we can't focus on trying to solve past problems. What we can do is focus on not letting the same kind of process make things worse.
Mhm.
We have that latitude. So I guess, I didn't want to get too far afield with my own question, so I figured I'd shut myself off right there. Let me ask a few of the other questions I might have for you. Well, I just covered them in dealing with the DEP thing. All right. Now I'm going to try and see. There are several other people on. Unfortunately, they're on their phones. And every time I click unmute, they don't. So I'm going to try that again. I see David Brierly has his hand raised icon. If you will unmute, let's see if you want to speak in this public hearing. There you go.
We've been trying.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
We've been trying.
Yeah, Kristen, you did a great job.
Thank
I
you.
lost there for a minute. Well, hold on a second. Let's find you. We hear you now. We don't see you. Great.
Okay, yeah, we're
Shares, we've got share
There you are.
screen.
Okay, go ahead. So this is David
Okay.
Brierly.
okay. Yeah,
So
thank you,
somebody's
Keith.
gonna have to-
Or Rick. I'm speaking from 91 Noble Avenue, and I guess a big question is, why is more sand even necessary? I have not heard that stated. Maybe it's in the paperwork, but it seems as though if you add more sand, you're going to be adding more wood to the fire and the increasing sand problems. The new seagrass is working fine, it seems like, and there's also the seagrass is also a natural preserve area, bird nesting area, and the increased seagrass would probably help the bird population too. But it's in seeing the photographs as a relatively recent arrival here in Noble Avenue, I can see the concerns and the issues raised by what's been done over the last 50 years. And it's more sand, and adding more sand doesn't really seem necessary in view of existing sand and the problems we're having with that. So I would just encourage a much closer review of why is more sand necessary or considered necessary. We seem to be doing okay, and the volleyball courts have good sand, good location, increased courts, it looks like, and the Noble Avenue seawalls have been disappearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I would like to hear, why is this considered necessary?
Well, I won't speak for Keith, but I heard his presentation, added a lot of answer to that question. I think you were on for the whole thing, so.
No, we weren't.
No, we weren't.
Well,
We had trouble getting
We
on.
had
at the
trouble
beginning.
signing on.
it's fortunate that this is a Zoom meeting. If you have gotten our agenda, you can click on the link that will bring you in a few days to a literal digital record of this meeting, sound and video. So you'll
Okay,
be able
good.
to review exactly what he said. And the link is in the agenda that was sent out. But it takes a few days before it gets up.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this motivated by the volleyball group?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, and also other beach users. I don't want to speak for the applicant. And we're not really at the point where we're going to have cross questioning yet. I want to make sure everybody makes their comments like you did, and commissioners have an opportunity to question you. So
Okay.
let's do that
Yep.
first. Commissioners? Okay, hang on a second. Beth, questions? No? Okay. Now, other members of the public that would like to speak. The others who are on the call are Galaxy S10, Robert Acalini, Hooligan, Dennis Gann, Lynn's iPhone. I'm gonna have them each. I can't get them to unmute. This is exasperating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Kathy Houlihan. We don't have any comments on this issue.
Okay. Everybody else unmute your own microphone and do the same.
No comments.
No comments? Okay, thank you.
No comment, Robert Acalini.
Okay. Dennis Gann or Lynn's iPhone?
I do have one comment. I do have a photograph in hand that's dated March 2019, and it shows a mountain of new sand.
Could you identify yourself first, please?
Lynn's iPhone. It's me, Lynn
Lynn.
Anderson.
Lynn Anderson.
You
Okay.
called on me, so I responded.
Yep, but I didn't know what your name is. Thank you.
Okay. I am now seeing my photograph. Are you seeing it?
Yes, I see it.
Yes. Okay. The date on that is March 2019. Someone asked whether any recent sand had been put on the beach. That was put on the volleyball courts. Probably in the cove now.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Dennis Gann. Go ahead, Dennis. Dennis Gann, do you want to speak on this subject? No, he just muted himself. Okay. So that's everybody in the public who would like to speak on the subject. I had questions for Keith, and a lot of them got answered, so let me go quickly. Got answered. The upland runoff from the street, Keith, seems like, from what I'm hearing from the public and part of what you said, that's a significant source of drainage, and that's going to erode sand down into the cove. Once it's in the cove, the longshore drift is going to take it east in front of Noble Avenue. So you said the town is interested in talking about ways to solve that problem. And it just occurred to me as I was listening to you, has anyone considered a drainage pipe that would go out several hundred feet into the bay under the beach? Sounds expensive to me. I'm no engineer, so I don't know. And I don't know about the water quality implications of a direct outfall of road runoff, but it occurs to me it's running onto a beach that the public uses now. So, you know, where do you want your polluted water to go, essentially? So has that ever been considered? That would solve the erosion problem, but it would create a discharge problem out in the open water. Kurt, Keith, you got on mute.
We can't hear you.
There you go.
Okay. It has occurred to us, but in view of the shifting nature of the sand out there in the shallow subtidal zone, our experience with drain pipes like that is they become clogged, and if there's a way to somehow funnel surface water away in a ditch or something like that, easier to control, and when it gets blocked, it's easier to fix. And so some consideration had been given to opening up that drainage ditch on the east edge of the beach, west edge of the Noble Avenue community. And I would have to go back to the town and find out where that lies right now, because I know we did discuss it. And the other option is to put some kind of a, like I said, some kind of an impediment out there at the gutter line on 215 to make sure that that water flows down to the parking lot and then goes out over the berm, either to the west or to the east.
Okay.
I think that was done.
Well, I didn't want to say that because I wasn't sure that it was done. After we went through the previous permitting process, I didn't get a lot of follow through, so I don't know exactly what was done, but I'll be talking to the town tomorrow and get a better idea on that.
Yes, it's done.
Okay.
Yeah, it's done and seems to be effective.
Helps a lot.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything else that frankly worth asking right now.
Kristen wants to say something.
Okay. Unmute, please.
The existing large container that was sunk in the 80s or late 70s, which is adjacent to the last house on the beach. So it's in the center of that beautiful old area of grass, is a big square block. And the drain at the end of the street in front of 103 goes into that big square retaining area. And then it goes into a pipe. The pipe that is currently in the soil is the fourth pipe. And I don't know why that one survived, but the middle two were iron and they rusted away. And I don't recall what the first one was made of. And there's discussion right now to reopen that pipe by ripping everything up and making a large culvert of some sort, which really isn't very positive when it looks at the tearing up the beach grass, etc.
Please no.
The problem is that huge square box that's down there, I'm sure is full because it's been there since the 80s. Lynn, do you remember when that was put in?
Not exactly, but you're right.
Yeah, it was put in the 80s, and it takes all the drain water from the street of Noble Avenue.
Right.
And if you go with a iron rod, I'm sure you could find it poking around. It's basically adjacent to the front door of the house, about 40 feet off of the fence, 20 to 40 feet.
But since that grass is the most effective thing we have on the beach right now, please don't do that.
Correct.
Don't destroy it.
Correct. Hope that helps.
We'll see. Okay, is there anyone else, commissioners or applicants, or the applicant or members of the public who would like to ask questions of one another? I do that with legal counsel saying that's appropriate for some cross questioning.
Grass? Do you want to ask about the grass? George
Yes,
O'Brien. There you go.
George O'Brien, 99 Noble. In reading over the proposal as it's stated and going through the whole 30-page setup, I got that this was a kind of open-ended proposal. And if anything goes forward, I would ask a much more concise description of what work is going to be done. You know, like the 250 square feet of grass that will be put in? Where's it going in? It's supposed to be on the plan, but I can't really, I couldn't say that I could say, oh, there it is on the plan. I couldn't, if somebody said, show me where you're going to put that grass, I couldn't put it in. So, things like that we've discussed, the 2,000 square yards, but we really only need 500.
Mhm.
So that would, I guess, would be my comment. It's a little bit more succinct description that would clearly state what's approved and what's not.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Other questions?
Yes, this is Lynn Anderson. I have another question
Uh-huh.
in the possibly stupid question category. Keith, you're the applicant, but you're not are you applying for someone else? Who are you applying for?
He's a representative of the town of Groton.
That's what I thought. So we're actually applying to ourselves.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, not really. You're applying to Noank for coastal site plan review and a special exception for putting the sand there. According
Right.
to our Noank zoning ordinance, we
Right,
have
but
to
but
approve
we're
that.
Noank, so yes, okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay. Yeah, the town of Groton is proposing something at its beach, but it is in Noank. That's the cross pollination here.
Sure.
Okay.
And it is by the Parks and Recs department.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm. Sure, gotcha.
Okay, if there are no other questions back and forth on this, the commission now goes to its business on this session, which means everybody else, please mute your microphones. Forgive me, there's a ton of juggling that goes on with all of this. I want to make sure I do it right. Okay, so it's time for the commission to debate how it would like to proceed. So that is myself and Blake Powell, Dana Oviatt, Art Tanner, Beth Steele. You can have your microphones unmuted so we can have our discussion. And to remind you, our choices are we can approve, we can deny, we can approve with conditions, or we can continue the hearing for 35 days and possibly longer if we get the applicant's approval of that. So what's your pleasure? Nip Tanner.
I appreciate all the input we got from Keith, and I thought the information that Kristen provided was very helpful. And having walked the property of the beach and looked at Kirsten's property this afternoon, I am very concerned about proceeding with the application as submitted. And just, I'm looking at the plan in front of me, and it seems to me that as a minimum, we should see a substantial increase in the beach grasses before we put any more sand on the beach. And not, the additional beach sand that was put in by the high school kids was a start, but it's I jokingly referred to, it reminds me of the hair on my head. It's there, but it's very skimpy. And what I'd like to see is beach grasses which are substantial, and ideally with a bit of mounding associated with them. And in order to accomplish that, in looking at the plan, it would seem to me that volleyball court number 9 needs to go away, because the logical extension of the existing beach grass, including the new, would, in order for it to be far enough away from tidal erosion, would have to be in the area where number 9 is, so that it could extend to the point where it overlapped volleyball court number 1. So, I'd be reluctant for us to try and approve this with conditions, because so much of the as submitted is problematic, and I don't think we should try and fix it. We should, my recommendation would be that we deny it and say why, and give the town the opportunity to come back with a revised proposal that would address our concerns.
Do you suppose we can get to your version of the promised land without denying it outright? Because that means you almost have to start the clock over. Would it might be better to continue the hearing, ask our questions of Bill, have him deal with the applicant, and try and get them to come back with something revised in the next, month or so. We could also get an extension if the town agrees to the extension. That's what the rule says. We get 35 if we want it. We can get more if they extend it. I'm just trying to avoid having to go back and start from scratch if we can do some fixing along the way. It would require us to meet and debate what things we actually want to do. I don't sense we're going to be able to do that tonight. So that's my question, to try and get to the same place you're talking about in a little bit different way.
I'm not adverse to steps that result in a proposal that fixes whatever concerns the commission members have. I've expressed mine. I don't know what concerns other members have, but if there's a way to get there without denying it and starting the process, I'm not adverse to exploring that. We could always say no at the end. If we didn't.
Okay. There you are. Others, Blake, Beth, or Dana? Beth, and then Blake. Got to unmute. No, you have to do it. I ask you there. You have to hit yours. There you go. Larry must have done it. It wasn't responding.
Yeah, I couldn't do it myself for
Okay.
some reason. I was just gonna say, I concur with what Nip said. I'm really uncomfortable with the plan as it's been laid out, because I'm not really sure. I mean, the whole point here is, I guess, to save a volleyball court, but I do have concerns for these people on Noble Avenue. And I just seen that we just approved this 2 years ago, and here we are again. So I think there's got to be some better measures in place to retain sand before we add more sand. And I don't necessarily think that just involves seagrass, although I think that's a huge part of it, that there has to be a lot more seagrass added. But there's also got to be some other measures in place, because I've looked back at the notes, from that 2018 meeting, and there was plant Native American beach grass, and there was there was also, installed the snow fence, and that didn't work, because here we are again. So I wish I had more suggestions about what could be done. But I'm not an expert in that regard, but I just know what has been done previously is not working and something needs to change. That's my feeling. So I would be in favor of I don't want to deny it outright. I'd like to see them come back with a proposal and see if they can satisfy those concerns.
Blake or Dana? Dana, unmute. There you go.
Okay, Dana Oviatt. I think we all should just continue the discussion. I don't think we should deny it outright. I don't have enough information. I haven't digested what's been going on for the last 2 hours enough to either say it should go forward or not. And the only other comment I have is I'm curious about what the actual criteria is for putting in more sand. As George O'Brien brought up, why are we doing this again? What is the point that tripped the decision to apply for putting more sand on the beach? And it might be a good idea if we had Mr. Berry from Groton Parks and Recs, if we were able to question him as well, and maybe he could clear up some of this stuff.
Okay. Blake? Unmute? I can't either. So Larry, could you unmute him? There you go. Thank you.
I got me. Yeah, Blake Powell, I agree. I would propose continuing the hearing. I'm really would like to hear why, if we added sand in March of 2019, we need to do it again this soon. I'm not real clear on how much sand we added in 2019, but it seems like if it's all gone, that we're just going to continue the problem. I'm not sure what's different between then and what we're proposing now.
Okay. I hear a strong consensus for continuing the hearing, and what I would suggest we do have this limitation on being able to speak to one another or to the applicants or to the residents. So for those who didn't hear it at the beginning, once we're into a public hearing process, we can only discuss this in public like this. We can't even pick up a phone and talk to each other as commissioners. That's the rules. So what I would suggest, we vote to continue the hearing for 35 days. And that will bring us to our January 19th meeting. In the meantime, what you can do, each commissioner, email me with the questions you would like to have asked of the applicant. Don't sermonize on anything in the email. Don't ask for comments back and forth. I will compile a list, give it to Bill Mulholland. He will deal with the applicant. That's the way the process has to work. So if there, Nip?
Yeah, you asked that we frame it as questions. I suggest that we make clear what our concerns are. And then they know what they're going to have to address in their revised presentation.
Good, thank you, excellent. So it would be a list of questions and concerns that you have. Is there any disagreement with that? 5 commissioners. Okay, do you need a motion to be clear? I think we probably need a motion for the record to continue the hearing because of the arcane rules of zoning. So somebody want to do that quickly? Beth Steele moves to continue the hearing. Okay, Nip Tanner seconds it. Debate? No debate. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, we'll do that. Get those to me in about the next 3 or 4 days if you could, so I can have Bill give them to the applicant and have the maximum amount of time for them to develop responses. So continued,
Right.
unanimous. Blake?
Can I just ask a procedural question here too? So
Yes.
in the meantime, can members of the public submit more information?
I don't, yeah, we're in a public hearing. I guess they can. they would have to submit it by an email.
Seeing all that between now and the next meeting?
Say that again?
We'll be getting copies of it between now and the next meeting, any additional information?
They're welcome to send it. I will check with John Casey and Bill tomorrow to make sure that that's okay. I think it is. It's a public hearing. It's remaining open. I see no reason why further, we're asking DACO and the town to give us further information. So I don't see any reason why we can't accept exhibits from anyone else. How do I get the word out to people other than just the people listening? I don't know. How do we let public know they can submit further information? And can they? All right, I will ask. Okay. So we've continued the hearing. We're gonna do that list for each of you. Do your list, get it to me. I'm gonna ask Bill and or John about public input. Anything else on this subject? Okay, hang on a second. All right, seeing no wildly gesticulating hands. It's 9:20. I do want to do one more piece of business. We won't get to short-term rentals. We probably won't get to minutes or ZEO reports. You probably don't care. But we have had an applicant for design review who's been sitting patiently for 2¼ hours, and I do think we ought to handle their business as well. So if there's no objection, we'll move to that on the agenda. And that is Mr. Drake and Miss Abbiati, who are, you can unmute yourselves now. I can see you waving and smiling. I don't know how you could smile after listening.
That's all right. You guys did fine. That was a long meeting, but you guys did good. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Hi, I'm
Okay,
Chris.
these
Drake.
are the applicants, and let me read it for the record. Find the record. There it is.
Hey, Rick, Kristen is waving her hand. I suspect
All right,
you're saying goodbye.
Kristen. We appreciate, yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, to get back. I need to find the applicants. There they are. Okay. This is an application of Christopher Drake and Billy Joe Abbiati for a certificate of design appropriateness to construct an addition on the front of their home at 68 Prospect Hill Road. Larry, can you grab that off of the OneDrive?
I got it. Give me 1 second.
Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't do it on a screen share, but okay, good. Here we are. Am I, can I scroll or do you have to?
I have to.
Okay. All right. This is the application. Larry will scroll through it quickly. So we'll get the sense of what's in the package, and then we'll go back and let the applicants give a presentation. That's the site plan. It's up near Noank Community Garden. There's 5 figures of design. It's an addition with a garage underneath. The addition is there on the left, the garage underneath. Okay, here now you have the photos of the house. And then the comps. Okay, that's the package. Now go back up to the front, and now either Mr. Drake or Ms. Abbiati, whoever wants to do the presentation.
I'll start out. My name's Chris Drake, 68 Prospect Hill. My wife, Billy Joe. sitting next to me here, and we're looking to add a addition off the front of the house. As you can see, this picture, if you stop there, is the GIS. Mr. Mulholland asked us to look at a 200-foot radius. And in that, there are there's 2 houses that are definitely in it and 2 houses that are right at the very edge of the circle, the 200 feet. We included photos of that just so you could see what's up here. And then, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, we are backed up to the Noank garden. So if you want to go down to the next slide, that is the east side of the house. So that'd be the east view of the house. The bigger portion behind it is the existing house there. You'll see that in the first photograph that we have, but that would be the the new view of the house. So basically, we're just coming straight off the front of the house with a one room. And that, by the way, this is just basically a living space with a garage underneath it. There's going to be no bathroom or anything. It's just a big open great room. So you could scroll down to the next, if you please. That's looking at the north elevation of the house. So if you're standing kind of in the Noank garden looking to the south, that's what you'd see. It's kind of hard to see, but it's a very, very steep hill right where we are here. So we'd just be kind of cutting into the hill from right to left. It's high on the right side, low on the left side. So we'd just be kind of utilizing that hill to gain the garage underneath. We'd be keeping the first floor. It would be the same elevation as the proposed addition. So we could go to the next one. Next elevation, that's the southerly elevation. So basically just looking 180 degrees from that last picture. Yeah, that's the back of the house. So you would be no visual change from the back of the house. And then the floor plan is just basically, as I said, just a big open room and the garage underneath. And then that's the existing east side of the house. We took these pictures and we realized, wow, it's mold really shows up well in a photograph. Should have power washed it first, but so this front little room here with the door on it and that deck would be removed, and the addition would be coming out directly towards us as we look at the picture here. And that's the north side of the house. So the addition would be over on the left side, coming down the hill there. And the south side, so the addition would be on your right-hand side. And the back of the house would be no change there. And then these are the views. So you're looking to the east there, and that's one of the houses that's within the 200-foot radius. Looking east, that's the Noank garden. Looking to the north, that's looking to the south, and that house is in the. You can kind of get an idea of how steep the hill is there. That's looking to the south. That house is within the 200-foot radius. And that's looking to the west. That's the parking lot of the old Noank school and I think the Swallows house there off in the distance. And that is our neighbor's house. We own the driveway. They have their right of way. They come up the driveway, and that house I don't believe is in the radius, but we thought we'd just add the picture just so you can get an idea of what's up here. And the same with that one. That house is on Prospect Hill, and on the corner lot. So as you come up the driveway, you would see that one. That one's right at about 200 feet. Again, we just thought we'd throw that in there so you can see what's going on. So that's pretty simple compared to your last meeting agenda.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions? Myself, Blake, Dana, Nip, and Beth. Questions? I note on this that the siding and the roof are like for like, which is good. So it fits
Yep.
in with, and there are also a couple of houses, one of them here that are clapboard, and that's what the vinyl siding looks like on that house. So
Correct.
in terms of comparables, it's pretty close. Any other questions of Blake, Dana, Nip, Beth? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion, which I believe Beth has. There you go.
I do have the motion. Larry, could you just scroll up to the application itself? Thank you so much. Thank you. I move to determine that based on the potential impact on neighborhood architectural harmony and character, property values, historical integrity, and/or public health and safety, the level of review deemed appropriate for this application is a site plan review under section 2.26.6.5, and to waive all specific submittal requirements that are not included in this application because they would not aid the commission in its determination of the application's compliance with section 2.26, and to accept the application as complete and to approve the application of Christopher Drake and Billy Joe Abadi. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. For a certificate of design appropriateness to add a one-story addition with garage underneath to property located at 68 Prospect Hill Road, Noank, Connecticut, because it meets the criteria set forth in 2.26 of the zoning ordinances for the Noank Fire District.
Is there a second? Nip, Tanner, second. Debate on the motion. Let me see. Dana, Blake. No debate on the motion. Okay. I'm having screen splitting problems here, so I'm going to call you as if it's a roll call vote so I can make sure I get everybody. Dana? Yes. Beth? Yes. Nip Tanner? Yes. Blake? Yes. Myself, yes. So unanimous. That means Chris and Billy Joe, you can go see Bill Mulholland next Tuesday to get the permit for this. Then that gives you access to get your building permit from the town.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. Thank you.
So much.
All right. You're welcome. Now, commission, I know it's getting late. I know you don't like to go 2 hours. We have a person who is sitting here waiting patiently to talk about the FEMA issue. I will point out that she sent a letter and I did circulate it to everyone. So you have seen that letter and it has been up on the website so the public could see it. I don't think we're going to do anything substantive on this issue tonight, and it's not a public hearing, so she can't speak anyway. But I just draw that to your attention. If anyone wants to talk about the FEMA issue tonight, commissioners, this would be your time to do it. I see no one. Okay, Ms. Gill, I'm sorry you had to sit through all of that, and we're not going to deal with that issue tonight. It's just sometimes our mind can't take it. It'll be on the agenda for a subsequent meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you for your patience. All right, I'm going to push my luck here. Who wants to do minutes and ZEO report so I can file them with the town and meet that kind of requirement? Has anybody read them so we could have a quick motion, or is there not a desire to do that? Nip, Beth, Blake, Dana, or me?
I have not read them.
You've not read them, okay. That suggests that maybe we just punt them. January 19th meeting is not going to be any better than this one. That's the problem. And I hate to have minutes hang out for 4 months, but if that's the case, that's the case. What's your pleasure? Anybody else want to weigh in? Beth?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion to adjourn? Nip Tanner, 2 hands. He beat you, Blake. All right. All those in favor, say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand. Yeah. Thank you for your indulgence. 2.5 hours is a lot. Appreciate it. And we'll